Welcome to our Bible history lesson time. We are going to start by singing our song again together. All that I am, I owe to thee. All that I am, I owe to thee. Thy wisdom, Lord, has fashioned me. I give my Maker thankful praise, whose wondrous works my soul amaze. Ere into being I was brought, thine I did see, and in thy thought my life in all its perfect plan was ordered ere my days began. Next, we are going to review our memory verse, which comes from Psalm 23. And today you are going to say this verse to your mom or dad. And you have to try to say it without any helps. They're going to keep track of how many times they had to help you. So let's practice a couple of times so that we can say it without any helps. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. I want you to think a minute before we say it again. 3 things God does in this verse for the shepherd boy. You prepare, you anoint, and the cup runs over. Okay? So let's try it again. 3 things. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. We're going to say it once more. Say it with me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. And now we are going to have our Bible history lesson. And our lesson is our last history lesson of the story of Solomon. And I would like to say it's a good and happy lesson, but not so much. Let me move this so you can see a picture. Here is a picture that we can pretend is King Solomon. All right? King Solomon had finished the great temple and had dedicated it to God. One night God came to him. God said, I have heard the prayer which you made in the temple, Solomon. I will bless the house which you have made for me. My eyes and my heart will be there continually. And if you will obey me as your father David did, and if you will keep all my commandments, then I will bless you and your children forever. But if you and your children turn away from me and do not obey me, if you begin to serve and worship other gods, then I will cut off Israel out of this land which I have given them, and I will hate this house which you have built. I will let other nations come and take away this kingdom, and I will let them destroy this palace. King Solomon ruled over Israel for 40 years. He was one of the greatest kings of all times. But although Solomon was very wise, he did one extremely foolish thing. He married a great many wives, and most of them were heathen, who did not love God. Many of them were the daughters of heathen kings. These heathen princesses worshipped idols. When they came to live in Solomon's palace, they brought their idols with them. When they wanted temples for their gods, Solomon built them temples. He even went with them to their temples and worshiped the idols with them. King Solomon knew that God had told his people never to marry heathen women. And he also knew that it was sin to worship idols. Even though King Solomon had heard God's own voice speaking to him twice during his life, he still turned his back on God. He listened to his many wives instead. Solomon had 1,000 women living in his palaces. 700 of them were his wives. No wonder God was angry with King Solomon. God came to him and said, "Since you have turned away from me and have disobeyed me, Solomon, I will surely tear the kingdom away from you, and I will give it to your servant. But for your father David's sake, I will not do it while you are the king. I shall wait until your son is the king. Then I shall take all the tribes away from him except one. I will leave him one tribe for David's sake." While Solomon was the king, he had spent great sums of money putting up beautiful palaces and large storehouses for grain and fruit. To get enough money for all these buildings, Solomon had made his people pay heavy taxes each year. He collected taxes from other nations too. Soon the people began to turn against their king. They were dissatisfied and unhappy. So we learn that King Solomon disobeyed God by marrying heathen wives, and he had 1,000 women living in his palaces. Do you think it's important for you to marry someone someday that knows God and loves him? Yes, it is one of the most important decisions you will ever make. And you know, many of your moms and dads are already praying for you that you will marry a godly man or a godly woman if you're going to be married. It's not too early for you to pray to God that he would lead you in your life. And if he wants you to get married, that he will provide a godly husband or a godly wife for you. Don't follow the way Solomon did. Instead, obey God's word and choose a woman or a man who loves God. That way you may raise your children to know him and love him too. So that is the end of our study of King Solomon. And next time, we are going to hear about the prophet Elijah.